And probably thinking about some of the work that I'd done earlier in the military and treatment, I said, you know, there's got to be a way to help these people and have more of a therapeutic and treatment model instead of this punishing corrective model to help these individuals. And so I started reading literature and looking out and, you know, found that, yes, there were some judges. I think that time probably the most ones that had received the most attention were in Florida, and where drug court was just starting in the early and mid 1990s. And so this is a model that I started reading and looking about and said, you know what, that model is better than anything I have ever seen. I've got to find out more. And so I started reading, going to conferences, and when I did, pretty soon I realized, you know, this is a model I want to adopt. I want to bring this model here in Utah. I want to bring it to the courts. But I found out that I didn't have the same reception, even in our court system. That the current Chief Justice at the time told me that he didn't believe in specialty courts, that wasn't the role of the courts, and that we just weren't going to do it. And so, but that didn't deter me. I said, well, I've got to figure out another way to do this. And so by that time, in the mid-1990s, another good friend of mine, Mike Levitt, who went on to become Secretary of HEW and run a lot of the programs in the Bush administration, was governor of the state of Utah. And I went to him, and he was a very good friend, and we talked about the problem and said, we've got to find a way to do that. And that was about the time that they had a settlement with the tobacco companies, and there was money coming into the state that hadn't been budgeted. And so I sat down with him, and we literally went in his office and wrote a bill, and because I'd had that experience, and so we wrote a bill and said, okay, we're going to earmark some of this money to start a drug court. And he, as the governor, put it in his proposal to the legislature. We had funding, so we got funding for drug court and started drug court. And I went in the trainings, and I went down to Louisiana, and I went up into New York and sat in the drug courts of judges that had just started this, and just, you know, I went down to Los Angeles and said, this is going to work. And so we started a drug court here in Utah, and with this funding. And the drug court was just a phenomenal success. Part of the material I've learned in Arbinger, I applied in the drug court process about how to correct and build relationships with people to do this, and it was very, very successful. And so now, for the last, since the mid-1990s, instead of 90% of the people coming back in the system, our track record, at least here in Utah, has been that about 70% of the people that graduate from our drug court, and to get in, we don't have first-time offenders. You have to be a second or third-time felony offender to even get in the program here. But about 70% of them never come back in the system again once they graduate. And so that's, for me, therapeutic courts and therapeutic justice and everything else really has a place in the law, and it works. And so my experience is not theoretical. It's dealing with people and hundreds of people that have come through my court that I consider, many of them, still friends. I mean, they have reunions every year. They have a drug court reunion. We have a big picnic, and we go to a park. And so we go back, and I have a lot of hugs and a lot of time together where they just want to tell me that they're still clean and that they're doing well. And you never know where it's going to happen. The other day I went to the dentist's office, and I was sitting in the dentist chair, and your mouth's all wide open, and I'm shot up with Novocaine, and I can't talk very well. And all of a sudden, the dental assistants that's sitting in the working on me and everything, getting me prepared to do the filling, started crying. And I figured, oh boy, I hope something's not wrong with me. You know, and so I sort of slobbered out, you know, what's wrong, and she said, you know, you've been coming here, and I've never told you this because I've been a little embarrassed to tell you, but my sister graduated from your drug court, and I want to tell you, I was just up at her house this last week, and above her bed is your graduation certificate, and I just want to tell you how much that her graduating, how much it changed her life, and what a good mom she is today, and how well her kids are doing, and how well her family's doing, and how well our family's doing. And she said, I just want to say thank you. You know, and this was just a few days before I was going to retire as a judge, and I thought, you know, of all the things that people could say for the 18 years that I was a judge, that kind of thank you is probably more important than anything that I could get. That I had the ability, through a program of seeing people as people and looking at them in a little different way, of changing a life. And so that impact and that part of this therapeutic justice and everything else for me is a real reward. It's a tremendous reward about the value of that. Now that I'm retired, I am working with the Arbinger Institute, and one of the things that I have seen as a judge over at least the 18 years is that the practice of law, when Justice Udall sat me down when I was in my 20s going to law school, you know, he told me about a brand of practicing law that was fun, that people, you know, they tried cases against each other and they were zealous advocates for their clients, but when the day was done, they could go out to dinner together, they could go to lunch together, their families could do things together, and it was a type of law and a professional law where you worked very hard, but at the end of the day, you respected each other, and it was an enjoyable profession. My experience over the last 18 years as a judge is that I don't see that same joy in practicing law. I see it getting more and more adversarial. In fact, I gave a seminar. One of the things that I've done with Arbinger is preparing a seminar to teach civility, in which they get credit for ethics, they get credit for professional responsibility, and they get credit. And so we had about 100 attorneys just the other day, just yesterday, in a seminar. And I asked the question at the start of the seminar, how many of you is the practice of law today better and more civil than it was when you started? I asked 100 attorneys. Not a single one raised their hand. Everyone said, no, the practice of law now seemed to be more uncivil, harder, more difficult. And that's been my experience as a judge. And so that's one of the reasons, and one of the projects that, now that I've retired, that I really want to take on is that the Arbinger Institute and the material, the research that's been done, which was started out as very scholarly research, has really developed material that can help people, whether they're attorneys or families or communities, but it really does apply in the legal profession, why this incivility is building, why people can't be nice, why they can't play nice together, why, and it's fundamentally based on the principle that we stop seeing each other as people, and we stop relating to each other as people, and we start looking at them as objects, you know, opposing counsel. We talk, instead of saying people's names when we get them up on the stand, we call them defendant. We don't call them by name. When we have arguments to juries, purposely, we put labels on them so that, and when we have arguments about labels and arguments about objects, we can say things that if they're a person, we wouldn't say. And we can treat counsel like that. If it's just opposing counsel or somebody did this, when they lose their humanity in the process, we lose a lot of our civility. And so what Arbinger's done is put together a body of study, but also a course and training that can help people understand that, why it happens, but more importantly, how to get out of that cycle, how to start seeing people as people, how to start practicing law in a way that you can see people as people, and as a result, restore civility and that joy and that to the practice of law that Justice Udall explained to me that he grew up on and existed, and it was the real reason that I went to law school, because that's the type of profession I wanted to be a part of.